Hey folks, Matthew Weiss here, WeissAdvice.com and WeissAdvice here on YouTube. In this video, I want to talk about getting a vocal larger than life. Now, in the last video, I showed how to tonally balance a vocal, and I really want to stress that in order to get the vocal to sound big and hyped in a really good way, it's very important that we get the first step down, which is tonally balancing the vocal. So if you haven't seen that video, I really recommend watching it first, because if we don't do that step right, we're not going to be able to do the following steps right. But with all that said, let's pop on in, let's give it a listen, and let's talk about some cool little techniques.
Good, cause I got to, baby, know that I ought to. Talk about this game, nigga, yeah, you a op to. I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that. I be doing my own, y'all niggas gon' hate, but that bullshit I don't condone.
Okay, so the vocal sounds okay, but it's a little small sounding in the mix. I'm gonna throw on my effects.
I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that. I be doing my own, y'all niggas gon' hate, but that bullshit I don't condone. Sir Jones, leave that fuck shit a fuck alone and catch up with your boy.
It's basically the difference between a decent sounding vocal like unmixed versus like a good sounding vocal mixed, right? That's a pretty dramatic difference. And actually level wise, it's not super different. Now there is, when I say level-wise it's not super different, what I mean is that the peak levels of the vocal are approximately the same, but of course the RMS value, the average level of the vocal, is quite larger. So let's talk about that first. Compression on vocals can be a very useful tool, particularly when we're talking about genres where we want really, really, really big vocals. If we want the vocal to sound bigger, but not explode out of the speakers on certain words, phrases, even syllables that just kind of leap forward, we might need to even things out pretty tightly. So my first move here, I decided I wanted to try this new Plugin Alliance compressor. It's really, really cool. I like it for vocals a lot. It almost defaults right to the perfect spot. But I just decided that I was going to use the 4:1 ratio, which is a typical starting spot for a vocal. It's not the rule, it's kind of like an arbitrary starting spot, but you got to start somewhere. And then the default timing here was 8 milliseconds, but I slowed it down to closer to 12. Now mind you, this timing is referring to RMS timing. RMS timing means average speed, so it's a lot slower than a true peak digital compressor, which is going to be reacting pretty fast. A peak digital compressor, this would be the equivalent of probably closer to like 80 milliseconds. So very, very different timing scales here. But basically, this is an RMS compressor. I'm setting the threshold so it just kind of gently evens things out. Let's do a little before and after.
I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that. I be doing my own, y'all niggas gon' hate, but that bullshit I don't condone. Sir Jones, leave that fuck shit a fuck alone and catch up with your boy. My name is Jones.
So what I've got going on here is kind of two simultaneous thresholds happening at the same time. Most of it is this slow compressor, which is what I keep referring to as the RMS value compressor. And that's really just taking off the groupings of vocals that are a little bit out of pocket. It's almost acting like an automated volume rider, which I think is really, really cool.
I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my...
So the I and feel that are getting attenuated ever so slightly. And then I also have this peak detector in. It really only happens a couple of times in the entire vocal at all, but there's just a couple of moments where there's little tiny bursts of energy that need to get attenuated, and that's what this peak detector can be used for. So that doesn't come up too often, but you'll catch it. Just watch this little, it's hard to see, but this little red guy that says peak.
I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that. I be doing my own, y'all niggas gon'...
So blink and you miss it, but it's just to make sure that at no point the vocal is ever getting too loud, and this actually allows me to push the overall level of the vocal, or the perceived level of the vocal, up by probably about 2.5 dB, 3 dB. It's definitely pretty significant overall. So one more time before and after.
I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that. I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that.
Pretty big difference, but it's keeping the peaks in check. Now, from there, let's hear it in the record.
I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that.
So it's still, the vocal tone is pretty neutral still. We balanced it yesterday in order to create a nice, even, full tone, but now we want to create a hyped tone, something that's above and beyond what a normal vocal would sound like. This is what a normal vocal would sound like. Now I want to hit those extremes, the bottom and the top, and really get those to kind of come to life. Now, there's a lot of ways of doing this. Exciters are a really common way. I've done this and shown this on the channel kind of in a different way. I have a technique where I use FabFilter Saturn 2 in order to create more body in a vocal that's lacking body. This vocal, however, is not lacking body, so we don't have that. This is going to be a different use of this, where I'm using this more as an exciter. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the extreme low end of the voice, which is this,
I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money,
and the extreme high of the voice, which is this.
I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga.
These are the things that make a vocal sound bigger when they're adjusted in a thoughtful way. So what I'm really doing here is I'm trying to bring more of the energy in these ranges forward without necessarily raising the level of these ranges. Now that's a little tricky. How do we get more of something without having more of something? Well, one way is through compression, right? We've shown that. And here there's a little dynamic section, and on both the top and on the bottom range, I've got just the slightest turn of the dynamics, and I find that that sounds pretty nice. And then also saturation. Saturation is excitement of harmonics. It doesn't necessarily raise the level of something. It brings more energy to a region. So it's like kind of like photo saturation, where if you start to saturate a color, the eye goes to it more because that color becomes more vivid. Kind of the same idea. So I'm doing, maybe a little more than a quarter turn on the low end here, and almost halfway of a turn on the top end, so I'm using quite a bit of it. I like this warm transformer setting for both. It's a pretty subtle setting, so even if I'm doing close to like 50% of the drive, it's still kind of fairly subtle. And then I'm doing a little bit of output makeup gain just to kind of like keep the overall level about the same. So here's our before and after.
I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that. I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that.
So it's the same level of vocal, but it's more hyped. Now, there's a number of ways you can do this. You don't have to have this particular plugin. You could create a couple of auxiliary sends or a couple of duplicates of the track and use crossovers, meaning EQs that separate these bands, and then just saturate the individual bands with your saturation device of choice. And you would probably get as good of results or maybe even better results, depending on how precise you are with doing it. But I like doing it with Saturn 2 because it's all kind of built in. It makes the workflow really easy. So there we go. Now, because I've hyped the top end, a little bit of de-essing was necessary. So it's again going to that same idea. If I'm pushing up the high end and then suddenly there's a sibilance, it's like the high end's going to sound great until it hits that sibilance, and then the whole vocal's going to pop out of the record. So I can't get as much high end if I don't control that. If I do control it, I can get more high end, and so the vocal will sound bigger. So a little bit of de-essing to control the vocal. A little bit of sculpting EQ. Once I start changing the compression, once I start changing the harmonics, then I might need to make some small adjustments. These are all pretty tight. This is a 2 dB cut. Well, I guess it's not that much, or it's not that tight, but it's a 2 dB cut at about 2.5. So kind of where the sort of nasal area of the vocal is bulking up. We talked about that a lot in the other video. And then a little bit around 460 hertz where a little bit of mud started to show up. But again, it's only about 2 dB, and the Q is actually kind of on the narrower side, like medium narrow kind of side. And then putting in a little bit more top end. So I'll give you the before and after on that.
I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that. I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that.
Again, once I control those things, I'm able to push up the vocal overall, so I'm able to get about another 1.5 dB of gain without it feeling like it's separating from the record. So you can see that I talked yesterday about how there's this like kind of back and forth process in the mixing world where it's like you do one thing, you tweak another, you do one thing, you tweak another. That's kind of my process here. I'm inching the vocal up bigger and bigger and bigger with every little step that I'm taking here. And actually, these last 4 steps here are all pretty small incremental changes overall. They're like little tweaks just to kind of make things a little bit bigger and better, but they add up to something that's pretty dramatically different. And again, the last one we're going to do here is going back to this compression idea of trying to get things as forward as possible, but controlling them so that as we push them up, we don't risk or run into the vocal overstepping the record at any point or becoming harsh at any point. So again, we've got top end, little bit of mid-range control here. So I'm only doing about a dB of gain in the mid-range, but I'm actually kind of attenuating more than I'm boosting in this mid-range. You'll see it move on the graph. And then also doing the same thing with the low end, controlling the low end and pushing it up a little bit more.
I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that.
So without.
I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that. I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that.
So it's not a huge change, but you'll notice it in the mix if I do it. So let's go through these one at a time, unbypassing them in the mix. So this is without Saturn II or any of the following devices.
I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that. I be doing my own, y'all niggas gon' hate, but that bullshit I don't condone.
With Saturn.
I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that. I be doing my own, y'all niggas gon' hate.
With the de-esser and additional EQ.
I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that. I be doing my own, y'all niggas gon' hate, but that bullshit I don't condone.
And lastly, with the multiband compression.
I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that. I be doing my own, y'all niggas gon' hate, but that bullshit I don't condone. Sir Jones, leave that fuck shit a fuck alone.
So you can hear that the top end is actually pretty hyped now, but it's not bothersome. Like it's clearly been excited, it's clearly been hyped up. It's not natural anymore, but it doesn't feel harsh. It doesn't feel wrong, and that's really the balance, in my opinion, for this kind of record, for like rap, hip-hop, pop records, EDM. It's to get that hype going without it actually sounding painful to the listener or annoying to the listener. Now, in other genres, like a lot of rock styles, folk styles, we probably don't want the additional hype so much. Probably would want to dial it back and keep things feeling a little bit more natural. So just putting that out there as a little disclaimer. I also think that maybe this compression is acting a little bit too tightly, so I'm just going to globally slow the attack down ever so slightly. You know, maybe just like 10 milliseconds or something like that.
I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that. I be doing my own, y'all niggas gon' hate, but that bullshit I don't condone.
Yeah, that opened it up a little bit better, but now it's a little loud, so I'm going to turn down the output by like half a decibel.
I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that. I be doing my own, y'all niggas gon' hate, but that bullshit I don't condone.
Let's speed up the attack, just a pinch. Let's take off that attenuation.
I be on my grind, niggas gon' feel that. Talk about this money, my nigga, yeah, I can hear that. I be doing my own.
So a lot of that kind of stuff, like just really tiny tweaking. Like as we get further and further and closer, the tweaks get smaller and smaller, and some of them even become like, what's even the difference? This is something that I'm going to hear and nobody else is. And then once we're in that point, but it feels good, then we're probably good money. So, going to wrap up here. If you dig this video, hit that like button. If you want to catch more videos like this, hit subscribe with the bell notification so you get notified. Got a lot of really great full-length tutorials available for sale in the WeissAdvice shop. You can go to WeissAdvice.com/shop. The link will be in the description, and you check those out. Reverb, compression, distortion, saturation, all sorts of really cool stuff in there. Lastly, you know what we say here at WeissAdvice. We are musicians, sound is our instrument, and I will catch you next time.